Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Capital One CapX Talks. I'm so glad that you all are here. My name is Megan Lathrop, and I am a money coach here within Capital One out of San Francisco. And just a little bit about me, I was a financial advisor for 10 years, and I loved serving my clients deeper around their relationship to money. So I became a money coach, and I studied psychology. A money coaching where we sit down with people and have with money so that you can feel empowered and confident in the decisions you're making around your career and your finances. So I'm so glad you all are here today, and I have a great group of panelists where we'll be talking about just that. We'll be talking about your career and your values and how can you be living a life where you're living in alignment with what's most important to you. But before we get started, I want to thank all my Capital One colleagues who are here, who have made this event possible. If we can just give them a brief round of applause. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And I guess we'll get started. I'm here with some career thought leaders from Los Angeles and beyond, and we'll be talking about their careers and how they got to be where they are today. So I will kick off with some brief introductions. We'll start with John Wolski. He is a culture evangelist with Zappos. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to be where you are now, and feel free to evangelize to us a little bit about culture.
That's right, we'll get an amen at the end. No, so I've done a lot of service jobs. I've done a lot of non-service jobs. I found Zappos 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, and just fell in love with the fact that this was a company that was just focused on service as our brand. And so the culture that backs it up. And then I started looking back at my history and realized that really every organization, every group that you work with has a culture. And so really getting to the heart of what is that culture, what is then your culture or your brand, and how does that drive success for you? So as an individual, your values are your culture. And so really getting to why do you do what you do, or why do you want to do what you want to do? And then figure out with the skills and the values that you have, how do you make that a reality?
Wonderful, awesome, thank you. We're so glad you're here. And next to you, we have Gwen Lane, founder of the LA Girl. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Gwen for a while. I'm glad that you're here. And tell us a bit about you. And also, it sounds like you've made some shifts in your career that have been really significant for you. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Gwen Lane, and I'm the founder of the LA Girl. It's an online lifestyle media company here in LA that serves millennial women. I was working in corporate marketing for over 12 years in entertainment and e-commerce industries, and I started my own company on the side as a hobby. Then I took off, and I realized, hey, this is a business, and this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And in turn, I started also teaching, and so I teach content creators how to build their media business, and it's been something that I've realized is through my core values, through actually learning with Megan and Capital One, that I value community, which I get from the LA Girl, and I also purpose, which is teaching other people to build their own businesses.
Who's the CEO of Times 10. I think leaving the entertainment industry and creating your own business from the ground up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. I was in the music industry ever since I was 16 years old, and got kind of crushed in it. Had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of negative stuff happened towards the end, and at that point I was broke about 4 years ago, had nothing. I was staring at a wall in the basement of my brother's office where his laundry was. And I was like, what am I going to do now? But I knew I loved to market and brand both people, products, and stuff in the music industry. And I said, how the heck can I turn this into what I want for my career? I was by myself, and now I sit here 4 years later. I have 19 employees. We just did an event yesterday for Adidas that had over 6,000 people at it. And it's been unbelievable, and it really fits into what I believe in, to my core of helping others, helping entrepreneurs figure out how to succeed, because I've really always just been an entrepreneur. That's all I really know.
Yeah,
so,
wonderful. Entrepreneur at heart. Great. Well, thanks for following your core. That's great. And next we have Andy Koo. He's the Director of Product Marketing at LinkedIn. And I had the pleasure of meeting you today, a fellow San Franciscan. Tell us a bit about your story. And also, you mentioned to me earlier that you're in your dream job, that you're living your dream. So tell us.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for that. My name is Andy Koo. I work at LinkedIn. I was born in Silicon Valley, born and raised actually in Cupertino, which is the headquarters of Apple's. But when I was born there, it was just apple orchards. And for me, my story is a story about a Silicon Valley guy who did the Silicon Valley thing, started a company, and completely, utterly failed at my company. And out of that experience, I got a lot of clarity in terms of what I want to do with my life. And out of that failure experience, really understanding that my life mission is to help people get jobs. And so now I'm at LinkedIn. I lead product marketing for the team at LinkedIn specifically that builds products to help people get jobs. So every day I go to work, and at my dream job, I help other people get jobs. And I would love to share my story of how I found my true mission in my life and how every day I'm helping folks like you around the world find jobs and find out their mission and their vocation.
Wow. So inspiring, wonderful. What an amazing group here. Well, you guys are such a great example because Capital One did a survey here for this event and found that 77% of respondents said at one point in their career they've taken a job that did not match their career values. And furthermore, 43% of these respondents said that they've taken more than one job that did not align with their career values. So we have great examples here of many of us who are on a journey, and we've probably been in that position as well. You know, you all are in a spot now where you're maybe more in alignment with your values, but we've been on a journey, so it doesn't just happen overnight. So we'll kind of explore a little more about how you got to this kind of more inspiring place that you're in now, given how many people out there are making choices for their work based on different things. So we'll start with sort of the theme of a metaphor. Back to the survey I mentioned, respondents were asked to choose from a list of metaphors they felt best described their progress in their career goal. 38% described their progress as a ladder, where they were consistently moving forward, achieving their goals, whereas 22% said that they still have not defined a career path or goals at all. And the rest of the group described it as a roller coaster, a merry-go-round, and bumper cars. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Are there any metaphors that might describe your whole journey or a metaphor of a certain aspect in your journey? Maybe we'll start with you, John. How would you describe this path?
Yeah, I think it's like a choose your own adventure book. You guys remember those? You could read to a certain point in the story, and then you had to make a decision, and you chose a decision, then you read what happened. And the good thing about a choose your own adventure book was then if you didn't like what happened, you could go back to that page where you made that decision and then try the other decision, right? So I think with our careers, you can get into something that you think you're passionate about, something that you're skilled for, and maybe it just doesn't really mesh with what you want to do for a living, right? For the rest of your life. That's a long time.
Sure.
So you choose that adventure, you get into it, you try it, and if it doesn't quite work, you always have the opportunity to say, let me get back here to this spot where I know where things were working, and then I can figure out what the next adventure is. That would be my metaphor.
Wow, that's so forgiving in the sense that you can take a step, and if it's not quite right for you, you can come back and rework your plan. I think so often we're afraid to take those steps, like we might get locked into a route or a path that's not right for us. So, and the word adventure, I mean, that opens up so much possibility if we viewed it that way rather than this tunnel we're on and we're chugging along. So that's great, thank you. What about you, Gwen? Are there metaphors that come to mind along your journey?
Definitely mine would be an obstacle course.
Okay.
Because I think it's a little bit of all the things that you mentioned. So in the beginning, when you're just starting out with college, you are trying to climb the ladder, right? Because you're trying to get up there and gain experience so that you can move up in whatever trajectory you're going. And then while you're there, you experience some ups and downs like a roller coaster. And then you realize you're kind of at a standstill with a merry-go-round. And then the bumper cars is when it starts getting bumpy, and I think that's the time that people start thinking of a career change. So I think for me, actually, my background, my first job was in finance. Didn't work out that way. And then I moved into advertising, marketing, and then to running my own business. So definitely was a mishmash of all those things.
Wow, definitely. You've had such a variety in your obstacle course. That's been the spice of your journey, maybe. Wonderful, great. And you must be really flexible to be able to move around like that.
Yeah, it's all the yoga.
Nice. And Ben, what about you and your pursuits that you've been on?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think I merge a couple of these. It's like a bumper car and a NASCAR race kind of all at once, where like I feel like everybody's going to try to bump you off, and somehow I just got to stay ahead of them. And I mean, it's a lot of it for me is that fear of failure, of like, I just don't want to fail. So every morning I just wake up and I'm just going to fight that fear of failure. Yeah. And why I bring up the bumper cars and the NASCAR races, it's like people are going to try to bump into you to make you fail. I mean, whether it's a client, a person, somebody who doesn't believe in you, whatever it is. And it's your job to be, Jeff Gordon and just stay ahead of them and just keep changing, keep beating them, keep winning. And so that's how it feels for me every day, is just I got to be faster than the next guy.
Right.
I got to be more cutting edge.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, Ben, you bring up a really good point, the fear of failure. That's, I think, been a part of all of our journeys, different steps we haven't taken because of fear. So you wake up each morning and you face that fear. Is there anything that you personally do that helps you move through it or motivates you? Do you have a personal mantra?
I mean, there's two people in my life that from the moment, I've always just looked up to them and stared up to them, which is my brother, who's here in the audience, and then my father. And my father, I watched him for 3 months during the winter season. He was working at a ski mountain, and I think he missed something like 12 hours. I mean, it was like less than 2 days during the 3 months. And I was looking at him, I'm like 8 years old at the time, and I'm like, it's insane. And I think to watch them and to watch also what my brother has done, it just sparked something in me. And I failed a lot. And I just don't want to fail again. And
sure.
I'm gonna, and we're all gonna.
Right.
But it's also what you do when you fail. And how do you get back up?
Absolutely.
And how do you just kick some butt right after you fail?
Yeah, great.
So.
I'm so glad you've had such significant role models.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you can follow. That's great. And Andy, what about you? Your journey, I know you've been at LinkedIn for the past 4 years. So what has been the metaphor to get you to where you are now?
I'm gonna steal the metaphor. I love the choose your own adventure metaphor. I agree with everything that you said. I think the reason why the choose your own adventure speaks to me is oftentimes we hear people say, what is your passion? And follow that passion. And the answer often is, I have no idea what passion is. I don't know. If I knew my passion, if I knew what I was gonna do, then I'd go do it. And I think oftentimes we're paralyzed by this thing, which is, I cannot move forward until I figure out that thing that I'm gonna do. And we spend years trying to figure out that thing. And I think the reason why the choose your own adventure analogy is so great is there are many endings in that book, and many of those endings are really good. And we're not forced to choose one ending. We can make a lot of decisions and know that there are multiple paths that you can take, multiple endings that we can have, multiple careers that we have, especially now with multiple careers. And there are multiple careers that can each be good, and that should free us up from the paralysis of, oh my gosh, I gotta choose that one, I've got one shot. I don't know if you guys have seen Hamilton, but it's not about the one shot. You have many shots, and many of the shots will end up in a really good spot.
Wow, that's so freeing to think that we have so many possibilities and that they're all positive. I mean, many of them are. That's wonderful. That helps me. That's a great perspective. Great. So the next theme I want to talk about is around mismatching. So a slightly different survey result than I mentioned before, but similar, is that according to our recent survey, 77% of Americans have taken a job that did not align with their career interests, ambitions, or long-term goals. And among those people, another third of them have taken a job that in addition to not being in alignment with them from their goals, it was also outside of their skill set or the field that they're interested in being in. So have you guys ever taken a job that did not match your career values or was completely outside of the field, your own field of expertise? And if you did, what's the story? Did you learn from it? Did it become a good case scenario? What came of it? You're nodding your head, Gwen. What comes up for you?
So definitely my first job right out of college. I was lucky enough to know someone, which is great, of getting a finance job. It's a dream job for a lot of people in LA, but when I started getting into the work, I realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But because the real world kind of looms over you the day after you graduate and you realize, oh, hey, who's gonna pay my rent? Who's gonna pay my car, my insurance? That financial burden starts to kind of creep up, and the fear kind of comes in and be like, okay, I'm going to do the responsible thing and be self-sufficient and get a job because that's what I'm supposed to do. And so instead of kind of giving myself the time to explore and try to figure out what I really wanted, I felt like I was kind of pushed into it by myself, and then by kind of the pressure of, you know, growing up and going to the real world. So I clearly found out that it wasn't for me a couple months in. Not just the job, but I also looked at the supervisors, because of course I wanted to climb the ladder and be like, is that what I want to be doing 5 years from now, 7 years from now? And if the answer is no, then that tells you something. And so I was really happy that I listened to my gut and my intuition and kind of knew that my values were not aligned in that case. And I feel fortunate, because I feel like I could have stayed there for many, many years and been really unhappy. And so I was happy to make the shift really early on in my career.
That's great. And it sounds like it's because you listened to your intuition, and you could have had some fear still arise around what would you do next, but you followed your inner voice and it worked out. So that's wonderful. I imagine you've continued to do that in the way that your career has shaped itself.
All the time.
Yeah, great. And John, as we were talking, it comes to mind, I don't know if this is the story you want to share about or not, but I was watching one of your TEDx talks this morning, and you talked about when you worked at the popcorn company, and some interesting things came from that. Is that a time that helped shape your career path and which way to go, given that wasn't your long-term aspiration?
Yeah, that was a first job. I lucked into a first job with a great family company. They had a great culture, although they still to this day haven't like called out what their culture is or what their brand is all about. But I learned so much about kind of how you should treat people from the leadership perspective. And it was a small team that just worked really hard all summer making the best caramel popcorn in the world. So I'll give a little shout out to Fisher's Popcorn. But no, I learned so many great lessons just in this little kind of first job at the beach in Ocean City, Maryland. So, but I think that we've all learned, and you talk about the failures and you don't want to fail. But there's so much value, you know, in failing. There's so much value in taking that next adventure and then learning great stuff from it. And then when you talk about the jobs that you've had, you know, we love to talk about those jobs where you became a supervisor or you started your own company and you're now successful. And you don't often stop and go, man, let me tell you, sometimes I really screwed it up. But I think the values, the values that you hold that were violated in those moments, right, and the lessons that you learn from that are so much more powerful than those times when things were really working really well. And so there's so much value. Don't stop yourself from thinking about those times and going, what was it that maybe I did wrong? What was it that I felt was wrong? And then how have I taken that and really shifted it, turned it on its head to make success what I'm doing right now?
Absolutely, right. So the down points are just as valuable. We can pull out the gold and it can inform us now. That's wonderful. We actually have a tool in our money coaching program that's identifying your values. And I ask people to share 2 stories with me. One is, what's a time in your life when you felt really alive and excited? And that's really easy for people to come up with. But I also have them share with me a time in their life they felt really disappointed. And that is, like you're saying, more valuable. That reveals so much about what's important to us. And fortunately or unfortunately, we sometimes have to live through that to be able to know. So I love that you're confirming to not avoid that. That's a part of our path.
Well, and back to the question itself, actually, when I moved to Las Vegas from the East Coast, I just moved. I just felt like it was the right place to go. Didn't have a job for the first month, and then, you know, there's that thing called rent.
Yes.
That I could have used some coaching on my financial situation, but at that point there was no income, so I just took a job. And it was a sales job, it was a call center job, it was awful, it was a hard sell, it was scripted, there were 62 rebuttals you had to know where to find really quickly in the packet. But I was a closer. Like, I'd never done sales before, but I was a closer, and the program was legitimate, otherwise I wouldn't have stuck around, but it was awful. Pay was horrible, the environment, the supervisors, everything was awful. But I stuck around for 3 years in that company because I needed to pay the bills. And I went from being a call center employee to a retention person to then being the trainer for new employees to being the retention trainer to doing HR, and so my resume grew. So while it was not a great company, they've since been closed for many years, but you know, I look at that time and I go, it was awful. I did what I had to do, right? That was a grin and bear it. But I also look at the skills that I learned that I can take other places now and that are really valuable.
Sure.
That I took a job and then it ended up working out pretty well.
Great. Yeah, you gathered a lot of assets that you now have in your pack. That's great. Wonderful. Well, what about you two? Is there a time you've done a mismatch?
Well, as I said, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I can't go on that side, but I can tell one other side, which is I've had a lot of people that have interviewed with me that love the company that we have, and they may not be right, but they want to be in so bad that they may take a position with us that may not fit their path. And so when I start recognizing that, noticing that, my thought process goes to, if you that may be slightly out of your comfort zone or maybe not exactly path, but do your best to find paperwork, but you really want to work in social media or you really want to work in this area. Well, in your off hours, figure out how. And so I don't think it's always the worst thing in the world. Over-deliver. Over-deliver.
So, absolutely. I completely agree with you.
I talk to people at Zappos or in the call center, in my organizational culture. And I did
Forming completely today. Yeah. What about you, Andy? Any advice for online? If someone's gotten out of alignment with their work, how can they get back on course?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the startup failure experience. I think your values have to start with who you are, and I think a lot of the things that you have to do is figure out who you are. So I'll go back to the choose your own adventure analogy. The reason why I like that analogy is when you choose your own adventure, you're choosing your own adventure. You're not somebody else's story imposed on you. And so can you imagine reading that book and somebody's reading alongside of you and they're saying, no, choose that one, no, go to that path. And I think a lot of times we have those expectations that are placed outside of us from our friends, from our parents, from whatever, and you're not choosing your own story. And so for me, I was born in Silicon Valley. What is a Silicon Valley story? Start a company. Everybody in Silicon Valley starts a company. And so when I started my company, I have I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but there were a lot of expectations of, I've just got to start a company. And so when I started my company, I had no mission for the company other than, I just want to start a company. And so we spent 3 years just going round and round and round, building products. Nothing was sticking. We'd scrap the products and kind of move on because we didn't know what we were doing. And finally, it came to a head. My friend came up to me and said, why are you doing this? And I said to him, I want to start a company. That's why I'm starting a company. And he said, congratulations, you started a company. Now what do you want to do? And out of that experience, I realized, I did some introspection after that, shut down the company, and recognized, longer story, that for me, the mission is to help people get jobs. And so from that experience, my values were much more aligned to who I am, as opposed to outside expectations of, as a Silicon Valley guy, you got to start a company. And so now that I'm at LinkedIn, the power of having a clear mission for your life, I can do a bunch of things at LinkedIn because I have that as a driving principle for myself. And that kind of key understanding of what your story is, not other people's story, I think is the crux of figuring out your own value.
Absolutely, great. So how would you advise someone who's on their path to begin identifying that for themselves? I mean, you went through a really big experience where I think you called it a failure, and it really showed you, and you had almost an awakening of, I want to connect to this and move from here. How would you advise someone else? Maybe they're not having a big failure, but how could they do that?
Yeah, just 3 things quickly. Number one, this is how I approached it. One is just deep introspection. And I went away. There's some places in Northern California that I go to in the mountains, and I just go away and I just journal and I think and I figure out what I want to do. That's one. Yes. 2, friends and family around you. There is nothing like having a sounding board of folks around you to encourage you and to help you down that path. And the third thing is just courage, the courage to move forward. I'll give one stat, and the second and third thing kind of are closely intertwined in terms of people and courage. We did a survey at LinkedIn, and we asked folks, how do you find a job? How do you figure out what you want to do next? And 90% of people said that they reach out to friends and family when they're trying to figure out the next opportunity. Out of all those folks, 65% said when they reached out to somebody, it was very effective. They call it quote unquote very effective in terms of reaching out. And half of those folks, the reason why it was effective for them wasn't because it helped them actually land a job, but because it gave them encouragement. Half the time, it was pure encouragement to take a step forward. And I feel like for a lot of folks, we know what we want to do. We know the thing that we should maybe take a step forward with, but it's really scary to step out. It's really scary to take a new job. It's really scary to switch a career. And having some people around you who love you to kind of give you a word of encouragement goes a really long way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How wonderful that you tapped into those deeper qualities and you gave yourself the time to pause and tune into that. That's wonderful. Thank you. Those are great tips. Great. Well, you touched on money a little bit, so I want to talk about money. So, no matter what, right, the goals we do have bills that come first. A little statistic here. Let's see, that's the top reason, right, that Americans took a job that compromised their career path or goals when they were first starting out is because they needed to get a job quickly for financial reasons. That's 60%. Other common motivations include they didn't feel they had enough of the right experience, was 15%, or that it would take too long to find the right job at 12% to be able to meet all their needs. So how has money played a role for you guys? And has that steered you into doing things that aren't quite right for you? Or how have you overcome it and stayed on course and just trusted that the monetization or the income or your revenue would follow? Or what advice would you have for people around that? Why don't we start with you, Ben?
Yeah, I know for me, this brings me right back to 4 years ago. And I had to make a decision whether I go take a corporate gig. I was getting offered corporate gigs, and I had no money. When I say I had no money, I ran into my ex-girlfriend one day. I was with her at the time, and she used to tell me how she would stick money in my wallet without me knowing. I was in a really rough place, but I had to sit there and look at it and go, where do I want to be? What's my passion? What do I believe in? All these things you were talking before. And yes, money is going to affect it so much, but the more you're willing to push and believe in it, the money is going to come from that position, because I think we've all done jobs that pay us far less than what we think we deserve. How do you show people why? Because I know the struggles. It's not always easy. It's going to be a struggle. Sometimes it may take a little longer than you expect.
Sure.
But there's definitely ways to do it.
Yeah, well, that's actually a great point, Ben, because money is so tied to us taking control of our career, and that makes me want to share another statistic with you, that a majority of our respondents, 58%, agreed that they don't feel like they have as much control as they would like in shaping their career path. And that's sort of what you're talking about, this difference between moving forward and making it happen, and then there's also this surrendering, right, where we allow things to unfold. So what about that? Looks like you had something, John. Has your path been a dance between taking control and surrendering?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I took the job at Zappos, I was doing audio production work and other stuff and playing in bands. And I was making a living. But I didn't have health insurance. And so the other side of the money side of things is taking care of your family. And I thought I should get real for my family. And that's how I found Zappos at all. And so I came into the call center and we paid pretty well, in the market for the call center. And I'd been there for 2 years and I'd earned some skill sets and some raises. And then this opportunity came up with Zappos Insights to share what we do with other people. And the first job that I took was a tour guide, developing a tour process of our campus in Las Vegas, which was $2 per hour less than what I was making in the call center. And so I had to talk to my wife and say, hey, look, I've got this opportunity, and I really feel like this matches my passion, right, and my skills. It's going to be less money, but it's getting it on the ground floor of this new department as well. So you kind of have to weigh the opportunity where I could have said no, stayed in the call center. Lord knows where I would be now in the call center, right? And it could have kept just going with money as the motivator, but opportunity that is value that's not money, right? Of becoming a part of this new department, and now for 8 years I've been sharing what we do in the Zappos family, and I can't say that $2 per hour pay cut didn't hurt the bank account, but in the long run, that investment of essentially being willing to give that up has come back tenfold in finding essentially what I should be doing with my life.
Wonderful. That's great. You took that move and you trusted, and then you allowed it to happen and it unfolded. That's great. Yeah. What about you, Gwen? Has your career been a balance of taking control and taking steps, or have you seen what's come to you and allowed that process to unfold, or a balance of the two?
So for me, I think that part of it you can control and part of it you can't. And the control part is, I think, where we make the decision. And this is kind of, I think, the trigger point for a lot of people, because you first start thinking about, okay, I want another job or I want to start another business, but you don't really do anything about it, then nothing really happens. But then I do believe in the action part where, okay, I'm going to start looking for jobs. I'm going to start checking out my LinkedIn, and then, maybe talking to a few people about, is there anything out there in that opportunities that maybe I can start thinking of. But if you don't do that, really nothing really happens. But then I do believe that when you do make the decision, I'm a big believer in things happen for you and not to you. And so I feel like once you made that decision, you kind of put it out there like, this is what I'm going to do, and next year I'm going to be working here, and this is what I'm going to be doing. I think that the universe kind of conspires to help you. And I don't know if it's like a subconscious thing or whatever it is that you believe, but I think it's the whole alignment thing. Everything becomes aligned. You're focused on it, and that's when everyone says, oh, it happened. That thing that I thought was never going to happen, I did all these things, and here it is. And I love how usually it's an awakening or kind of like a magical thing that happens, and there it is. And kind of like, I think for where we all are now, we're at our dream jobs, we're running our dream companies, I think that is kind of a mix of both control and surrender.
Yes, definitely. And Gwen, that's such a good point of tuning into how it's happening for you rather than to you. Just that mindset alone can help us, something's happening, and if we receive it that way, we work with it and it helps us. And if we think it's happening to us, it can maybe really throw us off course or have us go down a path that's not as much in alignment for us. So that alone is a game changer. Yeah. What about you, Andy? Has your path been, have you been taking control and persevering? Has it been a dance of allowing and surrendering? Your time journaling and all that is definitely probably more in the surrendering place, seeing what comes to you.
I think I agree with Gwen. I think it is, there are many things that you can control, and there are many things that are outside of your control for sure. I think the one thing I just add to that is, the one thing that is within your control that I think a lot of people don't understand the value of or the power of is other people.
Yes.
And I found that in my life, when I hit opportunities and see opportunities, it's through people around. Tell them what was going on and how much I was failing, and out to help you.
Yeah. You keep pointing us back to that. For encouragement, we can become, especially as entrepreneurs, in our own silos and forgetting how much support is around us if we just ask and reach out. So that's great. Thank you. So I want to switch gears now and ask a couple personalized questions to each of you. So John, at Zappos, you definitely encourage and empower a culture of service. Can you define what that means for Zappos and how people in all stages of their career might define or reframe the meaning of service for themselves in their own kind of personal career alignment?
Yeah, service for Zappos isn't a department or a thing that we do or we offer. It's who we are as a company. So kind of one of the mantras is that we're a service company that happens to sell insert products here, right? And so in the hiring process, and we hire 50% of the process is alignment with the core values of Zappos. Is this who you are? And then in that, we're going to look at the service question as well. So you can be coming into an accounting job or a programming job, and we're going to ask you questions about, think about that time when you just got amazing service and you felt like there was nothing else that the person wanted to do, but make sure you were taken care of, and tell me that story. And then sometime later in the interview, we'll ask the opposite question. Tell me about a time when you felt like you were a burden. And so if somebody doesn't have a story for either of those two, there's a good chance that they go through life pretty even-keeled, their blood pressure stays pretty calm, and that's great for them, but it's not gonna be great for our brand. Because no matter what you're doing and no matter where you are, in the ladder, the bumper cars, the choose your own adventure, service is what we do. And then I think especially as you grow in your career and you become a leader, service is what you do, right? You don't lead because you're so smart and you've worked so hard. That's all true. But you serve because you have great people that are going to help make this brand more successful. And if you can, as a leader, serve them to show them how they can become the next leader as well. So service isn't just, again, that thing that you do when people call the 1-800 number. Service should be in every direction. It should be in every day. And it should be at every level, and I think even more particularly at the top. You've got to think about, how am I serving the people that work for me, that work with me, that are making this brand successful? Because no brand is one person's success.
Absolutely. That's great. It's so great to have a culture that is all based around service, because I know when I talk to my friends and family, everyone is the happiest when they know they're being of service and they're actually helping. And usually when we're not worried about many of our basic needs, we want to know how we can help and how we can serve. So to have that be so embedded in the culture, wow, that would be a great company to work with. Wonderful. Great. So let's see, Andy. So given the importance of your role at LinkedIn and how important that is for so many employers to connect them with candidates and vice versa, what advice do you have for recent graduates or career changers on how to best leverage your platform for employment opportunities?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's people. Again, we looked at all the data on LinkedIn, and millions of people get jobs on LinkedIn every year. And we looked at all the folks who got jobs on LinkedIn. 70% of those folks who actually got a job got it through a connection. Somebody they knew, a school alum, somebody that they had worked with at a prior company. And what's really easy is you can go to LinkedIn, I'll do my LinkedIn plug, you can go to LinkedIn and you can say, you know what, this is my dream company, or this is my dream job. I want to work at Capital One. And you go to Capital One, you look at their jobs, and specifically on LinkedIn, you can see who you know at Capital One, specifically to that job. And there are probably classmates that you haven't talked to in many years, they might be working there. Or a coworker that you hadn't seen in many years, he might be working there. And LinkedIn makes it really easy for you to go and say, you know what, can we just grab coffee? I realize that you work at Capital One, it's my dream company. Let's just grab 20 minutes over coffee. And the power of that is borne out by the data. 70% of people got their jobs through things like that. And LinkedIn makes it really easy to see who in your network works at the company that you want to work at or has a job that you want.
Wow, awesome.
Let me add one little quick thing to that, just to give you another plug. My director of social media, who I hired through LinkedIn, hired my next person underneath her from a connection through LinkedIn that he applied from LinkedIn. So they worked at another agency together, and she pulled his resume out of it because she goes, hey, I know him, I know his work ethic, we should interview him next, because of exactly what you're talking about, of that joint connection. And out of LinkedIn alone, I had, within 48 hours, I had over 1,000 resumes for this one position.
Wow.
But this one person had the ability to separate themselves so quickly because of exactly what you're talking about. So I think that's a really, really, really cool aspect of what you guys are doing. So definitely when you're looking for a job, I think it's a great place to turn. So hey, that's not a plug, but I guess it is.
Yeah,
So.
wonderful. Definitely, the power of connection in our relationships, it's everything. It's so significant, our network. So thank you. So I think we have a few questions from the audience. Yes.
I have a question for all the panelists. What and when was your personal career aha moment?
So her question was, when and where, was that it? What and when was your personal aha moment? Yeah, John.
Yeah, for me, it was, just the first time I did what I do now, right? So I was giving tours of the office, building a tour experience in a team, and they had approached me about going and offering speaking on behalf of Zappos. And I got out there and did, and there were 600 people in the audience. And I was actually doing somebody else's PowerPoint. Don't ever do somebody else's PowerPoint. And so I learned really quickly we have a core value that's create fun and a little weirdness, which is like bring your whole self to the job. And so I got a great lesson in, if I do my version of it, I'll do the best version of it. But kind of even in that moment where it wasn't anywhere near the best, it was the first time I did it, I knew that I just wanted to share and inspire. Like, my job isn't to talk to people about Zappos and to sell them on Zappos. It's to change the way that people think about the way that they treat people or their brand, or hopefully both, to eventually change the way that work is done in the world. So a lot of what I talk about gets back to purpose. And just that first time speaking to 600 people, I could see if a handful of these 600 go and make real change, make their lives better, they're going to make the life of their employees better. As those employees become bosses and managers, they're going to do things a different way because they've seen it done this way. And I get to do that. And so that was my aha moment was this is the right thing for me. And I hadn't even really gotten into it, and I certainly wasn't very good at it at the time. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. What about the rest of you? When was your first aha moment?
For me, I think it was, so when I was working at my marketing job in entertainment, I started teaching. And I had taught before a couple years ago, and it was one of the most rewarding things. I'm sure you guys know, teaching is like something that, you instill all the knowledge and experience that you have into someone else and see what they create out of it. And when I was running the LA Girl, I love, the media side. I love the marketing and building a community. But then it was when I started teaching what I did with that business to other women who wanted to start their own business. That was my aha moment. And I was like, I love business in general, but I love teaching the most. And this was contribution. I started doing mentorship. I mentor other entrepreneurs, and I also mentor teen girls who are started to think about, going into business instead of, going into a corporate job. And so I think that for me was the light bulb that I think I had been waiting for my entire life, and that's what was making sense. And that's when I also knew that I got to talk to the boss and give in my 2 weeks notice because I couldn't run 2 companies and have my full-time job at the same time.
All right, great, wonderful. You stepped into teaching. Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, my aha moment was I thought when I was starting my agency that I was going to focus mostly on the music industry, and it was so funny. So I was reaching out to a headphone brand about a music client that we were working with, and I looked at all the headphone brands' advertising, marketing, content, and I was like, they're not very good at this. I'm like, maybe I can get them to let us do this. I never worked with a brand. I had done it growing up, but really had never done it. And I just took this big leap of faith, no different than probably many of you are taking leaps of faith, whether it's with jobs or anything else. But and I also put the career on the line to go, as a company, if we screw this up, that's gonna hurt us a lot for the future. And we dove in and we did really well. And now I'm working with one of my favorite brands in the world, Adidas, and I never thought I'd land here. And we don't work with anybody in the music industry now, and so it's turned completely 180. So it's very interesting.
Wonderful, great, cool. And I think we have one more question from the audience. Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about your current role and or career?
What is your favorite thing about your current role and or career? Why don't we start with you, Andy?
Sure. I think I mentioned it before. I think it's every day I go to work and I quite literally try to figure out how do I help people get jobs, and that's really powerful and meaningful for me. I'd say kind of 2 caveats behind that. One is I feel very blessed to work in an industry where my interest in working in tech aligns with my values, and I think that's very rare for me at least to do an industry and a values alignment. The second thing I'd say is, again, I don't want this talk for people to leave this talk and say, oh my gosh, what is my passion? And I need to figure this out tomorrow. It took me a bunch of years to figure this out. It took me a huge failure to figure this out. And early in my career, I was trying to figure out what do I actually want to do as a function? Do I want to do marketing? Do I want to do engineering? Do I want to do product management? So I think early in your career, you might be trying to figure out what you want to do. And then after that, it might be what industry do you want to work in. And then hopefully at some point, you can figure out these kind of like missional things, like how do I want to spend the rest of my life? But you'll get there. If it's not tomorrow, don't worry about it. It took me a bunch of years to get there first. So I just want to give you a word of encouragement that you'll get there eventually, but don't freak out if you don't get there tomorrow.
Great, great. Go ahead, we'll take one more, and then we have a question coming in from Twitter as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, what I was going to say is team and working with others. And I'll tell you, it's a weird thing, I would think, for many people in jobs where you feel like you're somewhat competing to move up the food chain inside of a business, but it's also how to keep that team camaraderie. And for me, it's been so amazing. The team I have now is unbelievable. And with the event we did yesterday, I watched everybody come together and work together. And at the end of it, we had the entire staff plus some of the Adidas people were just in the corner talking. And once we were done talking, they stopped and they just kind of praised our teamwork. And I think it's so cool as somebody who runs a company to watch that. So I think anybody, and I watch too often people competing inside of companies. instead of building each other up. And if you get a new job, make friends with the people around you instead of just trying to compete with them.
Right.
The power of you all together is going to be so much better than the power of you separate trying to compete.
Absolutely. Yes, you bring a great point that we're sort of leaving the time of competition and we're entering synergy and collaboration and working together, and it really is the way forward. Great. So a question in from Twitter. What is the #1 tip you'd give to millennials who want to get their career on the right track? So #1 tip for millennials, John.
Stop thinking of yourself as millennials.
Okay.
I just have a personal bent against. Plus, they always talk about boomers versus millennials, and they forget us Xers. But no. I mean, stop putting yourself into a category that anybody else has put you into. You're job seekers, you are skill holders, you are passionate people. And don't kind of let the world pigeonhole you into, I'm a millennial anything, right? So bring your best to the table. Continue to always learn and grow. Show people that while you may be born in a certain time frame, you're going to be an amazing, valuable employee, because there's nothing in the word millennial that says you can't be.
Great, definitely.
I got a pretty big one. Just as somebody who hires people, digital media has changed everything. So, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. I know you do also. And we're going to find your social media. So the first thing I do when I'm hiring people is I go to their Instagram, and Vegas may have been awesome, and that's awesome. But think through to go like, hey, I'm seeking a job. Maybe that night at Dre's where I'm doing shots, maybe I throw that in my story that goes away in 24 hours than in my stream.
Right.
So really thinking through that social media is going to be there, so maybe use it to help you, not hurt you.
Yes, definitely. Everything is visible these days, so definitely be mindful.
Yes, I definitely think that, millennials, I love millennials because I'm in that generation as well. And I love that we don't only think about us, we're very caring about other people, environment, and community. And I really love that about millennials. And I love that we're empowered by technology and, where we are right now with all the things we could do digitally. I do agree with Ben's. Social media cleanup is a must, especially when you are trying to get a job. And that's something that actually me and Megan are going to be teaching in our workshops with Capital One this summer, doing a social media cleanup before you, try to get a job, so that you don't blow it before you get an interview. And, you and your drunken pictures does not necessarily mean you're a bad employee, but maybe you just know how to have a good time. So definitely be careful about that.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Well, we're going to begin to wrap down our conversation today, and I want to thank you all for such an amazing conversation. We started with realizing we were maybe choosing our own adventures on our paths, and we talked about embracing failure as such a key time to understand what's important to us, knowing that the highs and lows are times where we still can find and identify our values. Moving along to staying connected with people, realizing we have so much support around us, and that through LinkedIn and connections and family, we can feel encouraged, and to stay true to ourselves and our core, and really uncover our values and let that motivate us. There's so much there. It's so rich. So thank you for such a thought-provoking conversation. And I want to thank all my colleagues here at Capital One again for organizing such an important event and topic here in LA. If you'd like to watch this talk, go to #CapXTalk, and you can see this in its entirety, or you can visit capx.FORA.tv. And those of you here in the room, we invite you to stay and have some refreshments, hang out, come say hello to each of us. And then also this weekend, if you'd like to continue exploring how to shape your career path, Gwen and I will be leading some workshops here on Saturday starting at noon. There'll be several throughout the day. You can come and have digital headshots made, and it'll be all about how to uncover your values and have that be in alignment with your brand, your work, your path as an entrepreneur. And you can really be at any stage in your career. You can be starting out, you can be making a huge shift, you can be later in your career. Everyone's welcome. So thanks so much. And just a reminder that please think of us at Capital One, that we're here to help you align your money and your career path and help you just understand key things that motivate. So thank you for coming, and please stick around for a little bit.